She stood in the Vichy French embassy in Washington on a warm night in June 1941, wearing an evening gown. She was carrying nothing more dangerous than her smile. The night watchman saw a woman meeting her lover. That was exactly what she wanted him to think. What he did not see was what she had memorized. He did not see the systematic months of careful seduction that had brought her to this exact moment. He did not see the codebook she was about to photograph, codebooks that would eventually unlock the door to North Africa. What he saw was a woman. And in 1941, that was the most perfectly constructed cover imaginable. Her name was Amy Elizabeth Thorpeck, and the intelligence world knew her by a single word, Cynthia. She was born in Minneapolis in 1910, the daughter of a United States Marine Corps officer. She grew up moving between diplomatic postings, speaking fluent French and Spanish by the time she was a teenager. She was brilliant, restless, beautiful, and she was profoundly bored by the life that her world expected her to live. In 1936, at the age of 26, she married Arthur Pack, a British diplomat 15 years her senior. The marriage gave her access to diplomatic circles across Europe and South America, and it gave her almost nothing else. Arthur Pack was cold, emotionally absent, and entirely unprepared for the force of personality he had married. By the time the marriage had settled into a polite disappointment, Betty had already begun paying very close attention to the world. She was an exceptionally acute observer of human nature, a natural intelligence gatherer who understood how men revealed themselves. MI6 simply gave her a framework and a salary. Her recruitment came through back channels in 1937. In Warsaw, she had already, on her own initiative, cultivated a relationship with a Polish military officer providing information about German troop movements. When British intelligence learned what she had accomplished, the decision to formally recruit her was immediate. She was given the codename Cynthia. In Chile, she cultivated sources inside the Italian naval community that provided MI6 with information on Axis shipping routes. Betty Pack used sexual relationships as an intelligence tool. She conducted affairs with men who had access to classified information. She did this with full knowledge and explicit authorization from her handlers. She was an operative who understood the psychological complexity of cover. By 1941, Betty was operating in Washington under William Stephenson, the Canadian spy master who ran British security coordination. Stephenson was one of the most sophisticated intelligence minds of the war, and he recognized in Betty Pack something genuinely rare. Stephenson assigned her a target that would define her war, the Vichy French embassy in Washington. The Royal Navy needed to know if Vichy forces in North Africa would resist. Without their cipher codes, they were operating in partial blindness. Betty's target was Charles Emmanuel Bruce, the press attaché. He was susceptible to flattery and charmed by the American woman. What followed was not a brief encounter, it was a relationship that lasted many months, conducted with patience and personal cost. She was building a genuine human connection with a man she was simultaneously deceiving. Bruce became her source and her access point. He helped arrange for Betty to spend evenings inside the embassy itself, presenting her presence to the night watchman as a private matter. The operation in 1942 remains one of the most audacious. They needed to physically access the cipher's room and photograph the codebook. They needed a reason to be in the building that the night watchman would find entirely unremarkable. The mission was about to begin. Betty provided the reason. She convinced Bruce that she wanted a night of privacy inside the embassy itself. The night watchman saw what any night watchman would have expected to see, a couple seeking discretion. He was given a glass of milk laced with a sedative, provided by the Georgia cracker, who had arranged to be nearby. When the watchman fell asleep, Betty's colleague entered through a window with a professional safecracker, opened the cipher room, and photographed the codebook. The operation required multiple nights. On one occasion, the night watchman woke too early, and Betty was required to improvise instantly, creating a scene at the embassy entrance that gave her colleague time to exit unseen. She improvised without hesitation. She did not freeze. She adapted using the tools she had refined, her ability to read a human being and respond to them in the way required. The cipher codes were successfully photographed and transmitted to London. The naval intelligence analysts who received them understood immediately what they had been given. For Allied planners preparing Operation Torch, the Vichy French naval ciphers provided critical insight into French naval disposition and communication protocols. The invasion landed with far greater confidence. The French North African forces did not mount the sustained opposition that Allied planners had feared. Historians have debated the precise weight of individual contributions, but the intelligence community's own internal assessment was unambiguous. Betty Pack's work was significant. General William Donovan called her the greatest unsung heroine of the war. Stephenson said she served with a devotion most operatives could only match. And then the war ended, and the silence began. The methods she had used were not methods that Allied governments were eager to acknowledge publicly. The strategic value was real but complicated. An American woman who had conducted authorized affairs was not a story that fit comfortably into any available post-war narrative. She was not celebrated or given a public commendation. She was, with polite efficiency, put quietly away. Male intelligence officers who used sexual access to gather intelligence appear regularly in the celebrated literature of wartime espionage. When a man sleeps with someone to obtain intelligence, he is a spy. When Betty Pack did the same, she was called a prostitute. She was remarkably unsuitable in an interview before her death. She said she had no regrets. She had done what needed doing. After the war, she married Charles Bruce. They moved to a castle in the Pyrenees region of France, in a village called Castel. Betty Pack Bruce died of cancer in December 1963 at the age of 53. The Vichy French cipher codes she photographed were among the most operationally valuable deliveries of the North African campaign. Real people came home from North Africa because the picture was clearer than it would otherwise have been. We have a long history of celebrating intelligence operatives who used every human vulnerability. Betty Pack meets every criterion we apply to those men. Her photograph hangs today in the International Spy Museum. The placard uses the word honey trap, a term never applied to a male operative. She deserved considerably more than a complicated footnote. She was not comfortable to remember. The most effective operatives rarely are.